Hello, I'm Josh Banks from Earth Moves, and today I'm joined by Tom Moosedale, a queer ecologist who helps people reconnect with nature through guided walks and talks, from foraging courses, and even planting sessions, which they have done here at Earth Moves. But first, Tom, can you tell us what is an horticulture?
Horticologist?
Yeah, that's okay.
So it's a phrase that I've seen used a few times, but it's basically in response to the word agroecologist. So that is like ecology on a bigger scale, on like a farm scale,
Yeah.
whereas horticology is like horticulture with ecology. So it's bringing these two disciplines together and creating an ecologically diverse garden that has food and flowers and beautifulness.
All mixed together in a permaculture way. So, how did you get started with gardening and connecting with nature?
Okay. My earliest memory is with my granddad collecting pansy seeds and growing them, and also pea seeds. And then my mum was a florist, so I've always been around plants. And it saved me from school. I really hated school, and I just disappeared into my nan's garden, which they gave me like half of. And from there, just like watching all the wildlife and how everything grew, and eating my own food.
So gardening's like a safe space for everyone, especially members of the queer community, like we've got here at Earth Moves. So how do you feel like nature and being queer intertwine?
Well, I think from an early age I must have like realised that it was a safe space to be queer in, because even though I didn't know it at the time, nature is queer. I'll probably have to explain that.
Yes.
So it came, so the whole queer ecology thing came from when scientists started studying lichens properly and could actually get in up close and look at the different species of cells. So they found out that there could be up to 25 different species in one lichen, all sharing beautiful different relationships, much like a queer community. Yeah, it just broke the whole binary system, the whole dualistic binary system that humans have created. It just threw that all out the window, the way all these different species come together to create one organism. And from that, they applied that perspective across other areas of nature, and they found out that each bit of nature that they looked at was queer in some way. And the one anomaly in the natural world is the human binary heteronormative thing. This just doesn't really exist anywhere else.
Almost as if it's a social construct.
Yeah, exactly. It does have a use, it's there for a reason, but it's not the only thing, it's just part of this whole queer, diverse amazingness. So queer people have never been in the minority in terms of nature, like everything else is queer as well.
And so talking about being wild, how can we get back to nature, get away from our day-to-day lives of being in offices and just connect?
So it's all there within us still. Each of us is a wild animal still. We're not anything different from a weasel or a snake or a bird or a plant. We're all the same, made out of the same stuff. So it's not that hard to reconnect. It's just getting past all the rubbish that people say on TV and that make it all exclusive to them, and you have to spend loads of money to get into gardening and things. You can literally just start from the cracks in the pavement outside your office. My favourite quote, or one of them, is "Beauty is in attention." So that means basically whatever you look at in nature, or it's like beautiful. So if you look at a little dandelion that's growing out of a crack in the pavement, you could spend your whole life learning about that one dandelion and its little ecology. Yeah, it's so easy to get into. Nature's everywhere. You can't get away from it. So yeah.
So, the government have just released their food plan, and you've made a food plan of your own here for our Earth Moves site. Can you tell us more about it, please?
Okay, I'll talk about the government's
Yes,
one at the minute.
the government's one first, and how R1 kind of counteracts that, and how people should be growing their own food.
Yeah. So I'll say that there isn't any one way to do anything. Like, the government's plan has some good things and some bad things. What's particularly bad about the government's one is that it creates this false choice between whether you use a bit of land and keep it for nature, or you use it for really intensive food growing. At the minute, 75% of the world's population is still fed on small subsistence, localized farms, which produce a hell of a lot of food alongside wildlife. Conventional farming yields are diminishing by the year because we've destroyed so much soil. So when the government plan is to intensify even further the farmland we have already, it's just ridiculous because there's going to be no soil left, and it ignores all the new science we've found out and all the old traditions we've sort of neglected, in ways to grow food alongside nature and have it all in the same space. The only sustainable foundation for any sort of wealth is in a good biodiverse ecosystem. Everything follows on from that, because it means the ecosystem that you're fundamentally based upon is healthy. It's diverse. You're not reliant on one monoculture crop, and if that fails, you're all doomed, like wheat or anything. You've got this whole beautiful biodiverse system underneath you that you can skip around on.
Yeah, and that's why permaculture is so amazing, because we've got all of these beautiful flowers, but also it's producing a yield for us at the same time.
Yeah. So permaculture is a system. It's not really like one way. It's just a organizational framework where you bring lots of different knowledge from all over the world, or every different area. It's like so the key thing I find about permaculture is the observational aspect. So before you move on to any site, you should just sit there and watch and see the wildlife that uses it, look at the plants, learn about what plants are doing what in there, so it'll tell you about the soil. And it just gives you an idea of the space. If you watch it for a year, you find out so much more than if you just go full force and start digging. You could lose so much effort because you didn't know it was going to be wet there over winter, or you didn't know it's acid soil and not alkaline soil. So observation is the key. Sitting still and watching is the most beautiful, mindful way of getting back to nature, I think. You find out so much more, just being open. I go back to the queer ecology thing. The main thing that comes from that is it leads you down a path of accepting that we actually know very little about the natural world, but that's such a beautiful place to be when you're not putting your perspective onto other creatures.
And you do ecological surveying as your job. You are the lucky one who gets to sit there and be mindful and look after nature. But can you tell us more about that? What does your day-to-day include?
Okay.
And how can everyone do it if they're thinking about starting to garden?
Yeah, so what I do for a living is ecological surveying, mainly botanical surveys. So at the minute I'm working with a company who have lots of farms that we go around wanting baseline surveys. So that is literally just going into a field, setting up what's called a transect, which is an area, fixed point in the land that you can go back to every year and measure. So we count the plants there and count the species, and then next year we can go back and see how many different species are there this year, and year after year go back and measure how the biodiversity is improving or decreasing. So that's my day-to-day. Setting up transects, counting plants, sleeping, and then everyone can do that. Everyone always gets a bit overwhelmed by how I know all the names of the different plants, but that's just because I've got a brain that works that way. I think the best tip I can give to people is find out how your memory works. Whether you remember sound better, smell better, whether you remember stories better. Everyone's got their own way of doing it. No way is the right or wrong way. So you can listen to a story about one plant and explore that. You can smell all the different plants and remember the smells. You can hear the sound through the different trees and try and learn how to tell the tree species from the way the wind blows through. There's lots of different ways to get back. You don't have to learn all the Latin names at all. There's so many more common, much more interesting common names to learn, which tell you a lot more about that plant.
So, speaking of your top tips, do you have any more advice to give to people? Obviously there's no one way to garden, but what do you recommend?
So first thing is observation, like we discussed. It's the best thing to do if you want to learn about anything. And a way to do that without getting overwhelmed is to just learn about one species a week. So you could, whether you're doing birds or plants or anything, so for example you could learn about dandelions for a week. Start off with their names from all around the world. Then their Latin name if you want. Learn about what time of year they flower and grow, what parts of the plant you can use for yourself, like if they're edible or toxic. Just really explore all the different stories. There's loads of stories about dandelions, like folk history and stuff. Just really explore that for a week and just have fun. If you're bored by it, then move on to the next one. There's no you don't have to stick to it. Don't pressurize yourself. Really explore them ways of how you remember stuff, whether it's by touch or smell or sight or sound. Yeah.
And that's an amazing tip. We'll definitely be taking that on here and having a Moose Plant of the Week.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you so much.
It's okay.
So, as your ecological surveying job, it's your job to go around and name plants, and obviously that's not important for us all to do, especially not the Latin names. But it's how we are able to say, oh look, there is our dandelion, and we can surprisingly eat them. So can you tell us more about plant naming?
Okay, so naming in general is quite important because it's like how do we tell each other which plants are toxic and which are edible. But humans have this horrible habit of once they know the name of something or someone, they collect it and then move on to the next thing, and they think the name is everything to know about that plant. Whereas just because you know the name of everything doesn't mean you know the entire personality of that species. So it's just coming back to that, like each plant we can see is an individual, just as me, you and Pete are an individual. Like when you say, oh look at the willow trees over there, all those willow trees aren't the same individual. Each one has their own character. You could spend your lifetime with one willow tree and find out so much of that particular tree's life that's completely different to the willow tree next to it.
And so that open-mindedness that we get from nature, from accepting that all plants are different, that they have more than one use, is perfect to take into all aspects of life, especially when interacting with marginalised people, especially those of the queer community.
Okay. Yeah, so that's a really good point. So in my opinion, there will be no environmental or social justice without LGBTQ plus justice and justice for all marginalised people, particularly those who don't have any fixed address, travelling, Gypsy, Roma communities, anyone who lives on the edge. They're such an integral part of a functioning society because we live in that edge zone of different perspectives, different ways of being. Every successful community movement or revolution has had a strong queer element or a strong element from lots of marginalised communities. A really good example of it in this country is the witch burning. The witches, when you look at the sort of historical documents, they were basically queer people or people with different ways of living, and the ruling powers of the time knew that if you took those people out of those communities, the communities will be more easily sucked into the system, the capitalist way of being, because they didn't have that tie to the thousands of years of oral history and story that kept these people going. So the medicinal knowledge, the folk history, all sorts of things that we've lost. We have almost none of that left in Britain, particularly anymore. So being queer to me is about trying to rescue that and bringing that back to communities. Being queer for me is about really embracing living in this between zone that most people don't have experience of, and sharing that knowledge and being able to look at things differently.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. It's us marginalised people on the outsides who have that different perspective and are able to see the flaws in the system and work towards making some change. So thank you, Tom, and thank you to those at home for watching.